morning. I am Angela Johnson, and I am a Spanish teacher at North Atlanta High School. Today, I am going to share with you how I use Google Slides in my teaching practices in a daily life. So, to get started, I am going to share with you that I use Google Slides, and Google Slides basically is my lesson plan for my classes. So you can just go to, if you open a new tab, you go over here, you go to your drive, and you just go to new, and you go to slides, and you just can choose your own template. And also, there are tons of free backgrounds. For example, if you look at mine over here, this was during the COVID era, and you just can personalize it. This is my Bitmoji. And also, when the students come to class, I am always playing music while I am in the hallway greeting the students. So it's an easy way to get started, and class starts running smoothly. Then I go to, when I come into the classroom, I greet them, and I use this calendar. You can also Google, for example, Hispanic celebrations during each month. So, because I think it is very important to incorporate the cultural aspect in your Spanish classes. So there are some times that I always have a hyperlink in these activities. For example, let me show you here Día de la Revolución Mexicana, and I have short readings. So sometimes I share them with the students, sometimes I don't. But it is important for me to have at least hyperlinks over here for things to incorporate in my daily classes. So we get started with our day. I ask them, what day is it today? What's today's date? I write it on the board. And then I try to build some connections with the students. So I ask them if there is a birthday in the classroom, if they have an exam, if they have homework. So I try to build connections with them with this. Also, for example, with the athletes, do you have a game today? Do you have practice? Who are you playing with? Is that team a good team? Is that team a bad team? Anyway, so things like those just to get the class started. I also have here, and this template is from another Spanish teacher that I bought it in TPT. And she also incorporates here questions to ask the students. So for example, this one is asking the students, what plans do you have for next week? Because next week we are on vacation for Thanksgiving. I ask few students, or some of them raise their hand, so I ask them about it, and we go from there. After this, I have a calendar talk, and I use this chat mat. And this is also from another Spanish teacher. Her name is Bethany Drew. And you can find tons of free chat mats that you can incorporate in your classes by going to aventurasnuevas.wordpress.com. And it's, for example, to build that connection with the students and ask a few students, ¿qué hiciste este fin de semana? So here you can see, what did you do this weekend? And I ask a few students. Some of them don't want to talk, so I leave them alone, but some of them are willing to share with you what they did over the weekend. And it's also a fun way to even practice the past tense without they knowing that you are practicing the past tense. And then I get started with my goals for the week. So I share 3 goals that we are working on throughout the week. Sometimes I have 3 goals, sometimes I have 2 goals, depending on the week, since we are on an A/B calendar. So I put those here according to the activities that we are going to complete that day. These are also the can-do statements of the things that we are going to do that day. And then I get started with the sponge activity. So they complete the sponge activity while I take attendance. And then after I finish taking attendance, we go back to this and we answer the questions or we share the sentences. For example, in this one is students are creating questions according to the images and using verbs like gustar. So I write those on the board, and usually I do a little pop grammar review on verbs like gustar. And then usually after the sponge, I use quizzes or a game that I incorporate in my classes. So there are tons of apps that are available for us in APS. And I usually have this on my slide, and I just go to the link and it gives the code to the students. So I go here, and then I share with them and they just write the code and we go from there. So everything is available during my Google Slides on my presentation, and I don't have to go and look for anything. So everything is connected through my Google Slides. And I also use Google Forms for them to complete listening activities, reading comprehension activities. So I have what we are going to do over here on my screen. And this is the link that I have already shared with them. So I always tell them, go to Google Classroom, and I put all of these links in Google Classroom so it's easy for them to find it. As I said before, this is kind of my lesson plan, so everything is right here, so I don't have to go and look for anything extra while I'm teaching. I also incorporate the textbook that we use in high school. We use the Vista curriculum, and specifically for my Spanish forum, we use Senderos, and for my native speakers, we use Galeria. And I also, as I said before, I create this in advance. So the students always to be able to use the textbook activities, they will have to go through my backpack. So I always tell them, go to my backpack, go to Vista, and then go back to Google Classroom so they can really find the activity and complete the activity. Then I usually give them some time. So I put my clock here, so the timer, so they know how much time do we have to complete the activity. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes. So it depends on the activity. For example, for this one, which was speaking activity, it will take them maybe 1 minute, but I give them 5 because by the time we have to walk out of the classroom, so we do not interrupt anyone else and we are not each other's background noise. So we go outside, so that's what I give them, around 5 minutes. Also, as I said, so I use games in my classroom, and I love this one. Bingo Baker is a free activity, and I use it to practice vocabulary. Again, I have, this is the link that I share with the students so they can create their own bingo card. And this is the one that I use to call the card so we can play the bingo online. Also, I use Quizlet, and I do pay for my version on Quizlet because I like to play the Quizlet Live, and Quizlet Live is only available through the paid version. So I go over here and we play games, and I divide them into groups, so it's also available for them. And then I also use this Quizlet to divide the students in groups, because Quizlet Live will organize them in random groups. And for example, when I'm going to do stations activities in my class, I divide them so they don't say, you always put me to work with X, Y, or Z. So I like that it has a random setting for groups, and that's what I use specifically for my stations activities. When I do station activities in my class, usually I work the 4 language skills, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. and the students have to follow the instructions. So we will have groups of 3 or 4, and the leader is the one who has to read the instructions. They complete a different set of activities, and then they bring me the answers. Also, in my classes here at the end of the day, I use the STAR student interview. And again, this is also to build connections. So as I said before, I have everything hyperlinked on my Google Slides, so I don't have to go back and forth looking for everything. And I bought this from another Spanish teacher, and this is available in on the TPT store. So we do the STAR student interview. They volunteer, the students love it. They come to the front, and then I just start asking these questions to them. Everything, all the scaffolding is on the board for them to answer the questions, and this is kind of like personal questions that I ask them. And then at the end of this interview, I give them a little certificate, and they love the certificate. So de donde eres, de donde es tu familia, and everything again is incorporated on my Google Slides. And also, I use Kahoot. So again, is over there on my Google Slides. The hyperlink is there. I just click on the hyperlink. I give them the code. They take their cell phones or their computers, and we start playing. And also, if we are doing reading activities, I try to create, depending on the theme. Again, I found a template that I like, and I love slidesmania.com. So I create the reading activity they have on paper. I hand them a handout of this, but we can read it together. And it's another way for me to be reading with them while they have their own activity. Another thing that I love is Wheel of Names. And I use Wheel of Names also. For example, my students sometimes are very quiet and then don't want to participate. So I have the Wheel of Names, and I created the roster with all my students, and I just call, this is a different one, but I usually bring the Wheel of Names up when I want the students to participate, and it's a random name calling, and they have to answer the questions. For example, this one is to practice a speaking activity, so I also use that to do a group activity to practice questions, answering and asking questions related to the unit that we are working on. Again, this is another, I use documents with them as well, so Google Docs. Again, here is my hyperlink. So all of these hyperlinks, they are linked to each of the Google Classroom. So the students just have to take their computer, go to Google Classroom, and they can access all of these materials. I also use Gimkit, and again, this is my hyperlink, and I use Gimkit also to practice vocabulary or to do kind of like review. If we are reading an article, I create some questions related to the article as a review if we don't finish it the first time we started reading it. So as a review, so we can catch up and remember what are we working on. And the last thing I would like to share is that I also incorporate YouTube videos into my Google Slides to do some brain breaks or to do some pop-up grammar explanations that I don't spend too much time with them. So for example, this one is excellent. So I tell them we are going to do a brain break. The video is already embedded onto my Google Slides. I just bring it up and we do the activity, as well as the, for example, the pop grammar activities that I do. The videos are already embedded on my slides. I just present it to the students, they take notes, and we move on. So this is Google Slides is a great way for you to have everything that you need for your classes. And it's an easy way. As I said, for me, this is kind of my lesson plan, and I have everything connected over here. So I don't have to start looking back and forth, what am I going to do today? The first time it requires a little of time for you to set it up, but then after that you just make copies, and change the content according to what you are doing that day. I hope you find something helpful and that at least you can adapt one of these things that I share with you today. Thank you so very much.